Hello, everybody, and a big welcome to all of you. I'm Megan Isidore. I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of River Otter Ecology Project, and I'm thrilled to see you here in this, our 10th year of existence. I am grateful to live and work on the unceded lands of the Coast Miwok people who have stewarded this land through the generations. We honor with gratitude the land itself and all of the ancestors, past, present, and emerging, and we thank them for protecting and caring for this land, and we honor them by upholding our responsibilities according to their example. Now, before we get going with our presentation, we have a little housekeeping to take care of. Let's everybody watch the chat for links as we talk. Terence Carroll will be putting links in to help you get more information about some of the items we talk about. We are also leaving lots of time for questions and answers at the end of the talk. So put your questions in the chat, mark them down. We'll have a nice panel discussion at the end, and you should be able to get all your questions answered. Now, River Otter Ecology Project is celebrating 10 years of using River Otter recovery to help us inspire and support restoration and conservation of whole watersheds. And our story is about the return of this really charismatic predator whose presence is a hopeful sign of pretty healthy watersheds. And it's about how paying attention to what's going on in our public spaces can change management and planning and change conservation outcomes, hopefully for the better. Studying the otters also led us to questions about how otter recovery might affect our shared watersheds and what their presence can tell us about the state of watersheds. Now, in order to tease out some of those answers and connections, our work in the past 10 years has included monitoring a 100-mile stretch of coast and waterways to discover whether the otter population is increasing, decreasing, or staying the same. In short, how are the otters doing? We have also had crowdsourced otter sightings, nearly 5,000 of them now, that inform us of otter presence all over California and beyond. You can learn all about this through our story map, and Terence is putting a link for that in the chat. We have offered 200 presentations and events to help raise awareness and educate about our shared watersheds. And that helps everyone understand the importance of protecting land and water for future generations and for all species. We have taught about 300 high school students through outdoor learning experiences, like these students who we go kayaking with the Tamales High students every year. It's a blast. We help them learn what it's like to be a field scientist. We help them learn how science happens, and we try to inspire them to continue their science educations and become watershed stewards. We published 2 peer-reviewed research papers in the past 10 years. We have 2 more in progress, and we've provided 30 or more research and technical reports to federal, state, and local agencies. Here are some of our students in the lab working on our prey study. And we also do a certain amount of advocacy. We've provided 15 comment letters and public testimony on agency project proposals, mostly based on our research findings. And we have supported 21 high school, college, and graduate internships, one of the things we love to do. And we are working with ongoing genetics and genomic studies and selected health studies to help us understand more about otter range and health in local waters. So that's what we have done partially for the past 10 years. This year, in addition to all of our monitoring and research and education, we have 2 new initiatives that we're beginning, and we're very excited about both of them. Both stem from our work in community science and with more urban river otters. We have the community otter spots, which is very nascent at the moment. We're reaching out to underserved communities to offer programs that will support their conservation goals. We'll offer programs that might be educational, like otter walks or classroom visits, maybe a sail on a science ship like the tall ship Call of the Sea. Programs might further community support, like getting fishing line receptacles at fishing areas that need them. Or they might be supportive of people's advocacy goals, like helping people contact their representatives or deal effectively with agencies. We're very grateful for the support of Marin County on this, and also the Institute for Integrative Conservation for this project. Our second new initiative is called Otter Ambassadors, and it's a part of our volunteer program. As otters spread out and thrive all over the Bay Area, we're finding that people in urban and suburban settings are having a lot more encounters with otters, as you'd expect. We're training a group of volunteers to go to some of the busy hotspots on the weekends to offer gentle education about living well with otters, about river otters, about wildlife in general, and about watersheds. This project is spearheaded by Karen James, who's speaking this afternoon, and Wendy Sparks and Jeff Torquemada. And moving on to presentations today, today's presenters include Karen James and Peter Bartow and Terence Carroll, all of whom have been with us for quite a long time. Terence co-founded River Otter Ecology Project and is our research director. You'll hear more about Karen and Peter in a bit, but first up is Robert Aston. Robert joined us during our first year, and he's done most of the jobs we have available. He is a field volunteer, a volunteer trainer. You're very likely to see him at environmental events and managing our environmental event volunteers. He's a popular speaker, and he's a valued and devoted board member. Robin is going to talk to us now about where and how you're most likely to find otters. Over to you, Robin.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin, and I'm here to talk about river otters, where they are and what to look for. There are 13 species of otter worldwide. The North American river otter is the only one endemic to the North American continent. Sea otters inhabited portions of the west coast of North America, along the Aleutian chain over to the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia, and down into northern Japan. This was the otter range map, river otter range map, prior to the arrival of Europeans. This was their range in about 1980. Notice a reduction of about 30%, which was mainly due to fur trapping, the expansion of agriculture and industry, pollution, and the loss of habitat due to human encroachment. This is their current range map in California. Otters are found in creeks and streams, rivers, ponds, lakes, bays, estuaries, and even on the coast. Here are 3 river otters checking out a sea otter. Anywhere, as long as there is available food and nearby freshwater source. Unlike sea otters, they need fresh water. Increasingly, they are found in urban areas. Don't fear for this one. Mom is in the water underneath the docks. This otter, dubbed Sutro Sam, took up residence in the remains of an old bathing complex in San Francisco. How to find otters. Keep your eyes open along waterways. River otters are elusive and only spend about 30% of their time in the water, so they're not necessarily easy to see. Look for their big V-shaped wake, and if they dive, you may see a line of bubbles as air leaves their coat. You can also follow their bubbles and look for their heads popping up again. River otters have a long, thick tail and are graceful in the water. They can hide very well, their heads being relatively small, and they can disappear into the vegetation. If wet and shiny, you may lose them in the glare and the reflection. Even though you may not see them, some indications that otters are present are slides and latrines. The left side of this photo, you can see the slide, and on the right, a latrine site. Slides are narrow corridors where otters enter or exit the water. Latrine sites are communal otter toilet areas where many otters poop and pee. They will scat, leave scent, and roll around in each other's leavings. They gain much information from this activity, including who was there, what they ate, their reproductive status, and a whole lot more that is not well understood yet. Here is a slide which has been used repeatedly, seen from an opposite bank and down a sand dune. Latrine sites can be almost anywhere. Under the trees, we set up a camera at this one to monitor activity. This is from that camera's view, sniffing and rolling. Scatting. And sniffing. Or latrine sites can be found in reeds, grasses, or bushes. Even out in the open, or even in sand dunes. Latrines sites are mostly found near edges of waterways, often on the small trails between bodies of water or along banks. At latrines, this is where you'll most likely see and or smell otter scat. It is usually a dark brown to black with specks, and it has a very, very distinctive particular odor. Looking closely, you might see fish bones, spines, and scales, or crustacean shells, feathers, insect pieces. Sometimes it might just be dried out and white. River otter tracks are about 2 to 3.5 inches long by 2 to 3 inches wide, the hind foot being a bit larger than the front. Front and hind. Front to the left, hind to the right. In the sand here, in front, is front above and below with the hind in the center. In this snow scene, you can also see a tail drag. You can tell the left from the right by the position of the big toe. Compare this picture of the left hind looking down at your own left hand with fingers splayed. Note the position of your thumb. A common print misidentification are river otter versus dog or raccoon. Note the 5 toes of the otter versus the 4 of the dog. The dog's thumb is actually their dew claw. Looking at raccoon tracks, they can be very much like otter and are easily to confuse. Like otters, raccoons show 5 digits with claws looking very similar. The best way to differentiate is to know otters have webbed feet, so the indentation between the digits are blurred. Raccoon digits generally show all the way down to the pad, and raccoon pads are C-shaped. Tracking is tough and takes much practice. Taking a reference along on your explorations always helps. As an aside, if you're interested in making track castings, check out the resources section on our website. Thank you for coming by today. And now over to our next presenter, Senior Volunteer Extraordinaire, the talented Pete, the Intrepid Bardo, one of our very own certified California naturalists.
We did it. Fantastic. All right, let me get this going. Bear with me here. All right. And then we do this thing. So many buttons to bear. Okay, perfect. Hi, guys. Thanks for attending. As Megan mentioned, I'm a longtime field research volunteer for River Otter Ecology Project. I probably started about the same time it did and have really enjoyed learning a lot about the river otter. It is truly an exciting and fun and cute as all get out critter. And I've also given me a chance as a field research volunteer to see other animals in the field. And that's what my little talk is going to be about, is the interaction between river otters and other wild things. When we go to check the cameras, the trail cameras that we set up, it's always very exciting to get the cards back to the house and the computer to see what had visited the camera during the couple of weeks that we let it go. And obviously, we're very happy to get river otters on camera, and so we can view their behavior. We also get other animals that kind of wander by, and then occasionally we really strike gold and get we get either video or photos of river otters interacting with other species. As the North American river otter is seemingly always on the move, they cross paths with many other critters, and be it competition for resources or just plain curiosity, the otters don't seem to shy away from encounters with other animals by land, by water, nor by air. But we're going to start with land. I'm going to show you some exciting clips and things. So let's start with this first one. Boom. So what this is, I'm going to start it now. This is a bobcat. You know the bobcat. This is at Rodeo Lagoon. One of our cameras picked this up. And what is that bobcat looking so curiously at? Yep, it's a mother and pup. You know, they're both predators. Bobcats aren't necessarily going to predate on a river otter. It would waste so much energy to do so. They will take a pup, I'm assuming, but mainly when they come across, they probably do this very thing. They look at each other and then run away. Cute pup. Okay. This next one is a series of photographs by a local photographer, Trish Carney. She captured this coyote and otter encounter out at Abbott's Lagoon. As you'll see in the pictures, the coyote is trying to snag some food from a cache of prey items the otters have stashed near shore. And these are wonderful photographs. As you can see, the coyote is keeping one eye on the otter and actually both on the otter, and his nose on the food. And then the mother, the matriarch there, she won't have any of it and runs the coyote off. This last picture could be, you'd think like a record cover or something, but I think the coyote pretty much beat it right after that. River otters don't have a size issue. If it's something they want away from them, they'll run it off, or at least try. This next one is a video compilation. It's kind of extraordinary. This was taken out by Drake's Bay down near the Elephant Seal Overlook. It's a series of clips that we put together that it shows an otter. You'll see, let me go ahead and start it. You'll see an otter back there. That's a little freshwater hole. And there's a grebe that the otter had brought in as a kill. And these two coyotes want to get to it, either the water or the grebe or something. And this plucky, tenacious river otter doesn't want them to get anywhere near him or her. It's a really good representation of ferocity packed in a small size. The seemingly poor condition of these two coyotes really contrasts with that healthy specimen you saw in the photo compilation. Here, if you look at the coyotes, and I've looked at these videos quite a bit, they look skinny and just not too good, not too healthy. And, you know, drought times are tough, and it's forced wildlife into smaller areas for sources of water and for prey. And basically, it's just become a lot more challenging. But yes, it's a cute little river otter, but it's also tough as nails. The coyotes didn't want to give up. And their best bet was pretty much waiting out the otter to leave, which, as you'll see, the otter eventually does leave. Yeah, so the otter's gone, and you'll see the one coyote goes, and I believe it's hard to tell, but I think it gets that grebe. And you'll hear some growling. That's one coyote telling the other coyote, I got it. This next one, this is kind of interesting. So we're moving on to water, and otters are very effective at hunting by land or by sea. And this is an interesting clip. This was taken up in Jenner near the mouth of the Russian River. A passerby took a series of videos of the river otter nabbing a gull for a meal and wrestling it over to this little rock pile. And then you'll see that the otter is joined by a young and curious harbor seal. And, seals are also mammals. They have teeth. They prey upon fish and crustaceans, but probably have zero interest in the bird. That's just not part of their diet. But we're guessing it's probably a very young harbor seal, and it's just very curious on what this other critter is. It's fun watching two marine mammals cross paths, and you'll see through this that the river otter is very comfortable moving across land and through the sea. But I'll let you just enjoy the encounter. I had stripped the sound off of these clips because it was taken from a metal bridge with cars roaring upon it, and you probably wouldn't want to hear that. My favorite part. Tag, you're it. And I think that just kind of that enraged the otter, and it goes and chases after the harbor seal. And as you'll see in a second, sorry, it's kind of a long clip. I chopped it down, but it's still a little bit. There they go. Okay. But that's a fun one. It's one of those interactions, you're lucky to see if you're out there in the wild. Whoops. This is a blink and you'll miss it. You'll just see a salmon, that's a coho salmon, cruising up Lagunitas Creek with this river otter and chasing after it. It's a really great clip. So whoever caught that one was lucked out. Let's see, this next one, this is another trail camera, and I'll start in a second. I'll go ahead and start. It runs a little bit long. This is a river otter that was dragging a gray smoothhound shark out of a culvert after nibbling on it. She had caught it out of Drake's Bay, dragged it in the culvert, wrestled around with it, and then the last video was that one. She then dragged it back to the pond where her very hungry young waited. Fun fact, the smoothhound shark, that fish you just saw there, its genus and species is Mustelus mustelus, which is derived from the Latin word for weasel, which is also the source of the genus river otters belong to, Mustela. So there you go. That'll win a bar bet for you. Apparently, though, brotherhood only goes so far, and they might be family in name, and that's about it. And then our next, just got a few more. We've got some documented river otter and bird interaction. And this first one is, let's start it up. That's a sparrow watching a river otter sail by, and then not knowing, but there's another one getting very close. You'll see it takes off low across the water there, and the otters will just chase after it. Let's see. Here's a beautiful photo by a photographer, Debbie Fire. It's a great blue heron watching a raft of otters swimming by. I've been told a group of otters on land is called a romp, and in the water, they're a raft. So there you go. It's another picture by Debbie Fire. Speaking of a romp, here's one watching a great egret. It's a beautiful photo. And then this next set, which are pretty remarkable. Let me get this fired up. This is a series of photos by photographer Bill Barrett taken up in Jenner, and they're wonderful. You see a bald eagle trying to get some unknown prey item from this tenacious river otter who wasn't going to let it go. And it's rare to see such enigmatic, charismatic animals so different coming together. But this series, that's a beautiful picture. I I don't know, we don't know whether the eagle eventually was able to nab that thing, but you can see the river otter wasn't going to make it easy. Great stuff. And then lastly, Robin had put this slide up earlier. People often ask what happens if a river otter and a sea otter come together. And here in the Bay Area, which, you know, back in the day, hundreds of years ago, there was quite a bit of sea otter. There's a pretty large sea otter population in San Francisco Bay. But now it's very rare, but they will swim by time every once in a while. And our local river otters aren't used to them at all. This photo comes from somebody named Harry McGrath and shows a time when a sea otter visited Drake's Bay near Chimney Rock. There was no, when the river otters saw this guy in the bay, they swam out all together to check him out. There was no physical interactions or altercations. Their otters were just very curious and kept their distance. The sea otter seemed slightly interested and then just went and swam around the point with the river otters following. And then the river otters returned, and that was the last we saw of the sea otter. So if any of you out there are looking into a great research project, do sea otter, river otter dynamics. That would be a good one. Anyway, that's it. That's basically, I hope you enjoyed a little peek into river otter, other critter relationships. It's, you know, keep your eyes open. You might get lucky if you see them yourself. And now I'd like to pass the baton to my colleague, Karen James. Karen's another longtime volunteer, a certified California naturalist, a senior field volunteer, popular speaker, photographer, otter watcher extraordinaire, and generally a very nice person. Karen is also one of the people spearheading our new Otter Ambassador program. So let me stop sharing and take it away, Karen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Peter. I'm just waiting for Megan to queue up here for a second. Those were fabulous videos and photos. Wow. All right. So what I want to talk is, so I've been with the River Otter Ecology Project for about 6 to 7 years now. The past 4 years, I've been following several otters in my hometown. I'm curious about how they navigate in our cities and around the humans that live in them. The following videos and photos are all taken in the urban setting. Oh my God, this was a mom and 5 putts stuffing themselves through a gate along one of our local canals. Anyway, it makes me smile and chuckle every time I see it. Anyway, how to be a respectful otter watcher. First of all, give them their space. If you see an otter, don't approach it. You may see an otter trying to cross a pathway or a road. Give them the space to cross. As you see in this next video, this otter is trying to cross from one pond to another with its fresh catch. It starts and stops often, checking several paths that merge at this one point. If you have children with you, keep them quiet. And if you have dogs, don't let them near them or don't let them bark at the otter. If you follow these simple rules, you will be rewarded with you'll be rewarded with scenes like this. Reminds me of being in a crosswalk, checking both ways. And then once he hits the grass, there he goes. And then you get to see some other fun little things that others do if you're quiet and just be patient. This guy was hilarious. So this youngster is having a ball with these buoys that are strung across the canal. I could have stayed out there hours watching this little guy. While we're watching this, I want to bring up another point about being a good otter watcher is photography and social media. Since the pandemic, more people have been out with cameras. This is creating a big problem for our wildlife, as people are posting locations of where they saw a particular bird or mammal. For example, earlier this year, someone found a long-eared owl in a local park. They posted its location on social media. Within a day, over 100 people showed up. Some were trying to even get it to fly so they could get the shot. What they don't understand is they are costing this bird vital energy, which it needs for its very survival. By doing this, you could cost it its life. So please don't post locations and don't approach the animal. Just watch them how they are. Thank you. Okay, another thing that otters in an urban setting they have to contend with a little bit more that I've noticed is garbage. And they deal with it a little bit more than their wild cousins along the coasts and in the rivers. They're very curious creatures like this guy. This big bag was floating down the canal and he jumped on it and rode it down the canal, very curious about it. Unfortunately, what we don't know is if there's toxic materials in these bags or other things that are deposited into the canals and our local waterways. We have no way of knowing. In the next video, this otter is playing with looks like a sheet of some sort. When I first observed this behavior, I was a little concerned that they might get entangled in it, but they don't. And it's kind of bizarre. I've seen several sheets and tarps thrown into the canal. But they're always curious about it. It is kind of funny, but it's also very sad. We need to do a better job at keeping our waterways clean and not taking things and throwing them into our canals and our lakes. Beautiful. And finally, this is how to be a good otter watcher. I love this video. So this youngster decides to hop out of the pond and have a good roll and to relieve itself. In the background, you're going to see a gentleman with his little pup in his hands. He's got his fishing pole there. He knows the otter's there. He's giving him space and letting him do his thing. And he gets to view this beautiful animal that most of us don't get to see. And that's the way to be a good otter watcher. Anyway, thank you, everyone. And now let me introduce you to Terence Carroll, the co-founder and research director of the River Otter Ecology Project. Thank you.
Sorry, excuse me for just a sec. The three presentations that we just saw represent parts of the journey of discovery, learning, and advocacy that River Otter Ecology Project has been on since its founding 10 years ago. Robin talked about finding otters and how to find them. Our project started with this range map that shows no river otters in Marin County and most of the Bay Area. Now, we knew this map might be wrong because we had seen river otters with our own eyes right where we live, and we wanted to know where else they might be. So just like Robin did, we started with a broad view, and we set up our Otter Spotter program and invited anyone who had seen an otter to tell us about it. This photo by Jerry Ting is the very first Otter Spotter photo we received. And this was an otter at Coyote Hills Regional Park in Fremont. After this, people started sending in their sightings, and then that river otter showed up in Sutro Baths in San Francisco and caused a minor sensation. No one in living memory had seen a river otter in the city before. It was exotic, and it was a good news story of recovery and return of a species that we had driven to local extinction decades before. And as you might imagine, after that, our Otter Spotter program took off. And 10 years later, we've received almost 5,000 sighting reports, and we changed that range map. But as Robin also did, zooming in to take a more detailed look, we did that too. We set up a long-term monitoring program at focal study sites here in Marin. And by gathering long-term data, we can take a closer look at what the recovery and return of river otters means in ecological terms. And we also learned some things that we didn't know before about our local otters. Just for example, birds are a bigger part of their diet than we expected, and a bigger part in winter than at other times of year. We also learned that access to nearshore foraging areas, marine foraging areas, seems to be an important factor in river otter success. And we learned that river otter abundance is increasing at our sites in northern Marin, but not at our sites in southern Marin. The one missing piece that we still have is how river otters disperse and move around the landscape. We can't identify individual river otters by sight or from videos, so we're working on identifying them by extracting DNA from their scat. When we're able to do that, we may be able to learn something more about their dispersal and the intermixing of different groups and how different groups are related. Then Pete's presentation highlighted another important part of long-term monitoring. River otters return to landscapes and ecosystems that they had been absent from for decades. In relation to other wildlife, they returned as predators, like in this photo, or as competitors for resources, or often in a more complex arrangement. The otter you saw chasing a salmon in winter likely spent the previous summer consuming invasive crayfish who predate juvenile salmon. Through long-term monitoring, we can start to understand changes over time in the success of river otter recovery, but also in their relationship to the shared habitats that they rely on. And understanding these changes can help us see the effects of drought, warming, and other habitat stressors that climate change brings. And there's one other creature now sharing habitat with river otters, and that's people, us. Karen talked about respectful coexistence with otters in our urban spaces. And she reminded us that while we might choose to ignore the careless fouling of our waterways with toxics and trash, river otters don't have that option. But beyond that, river otters in urban waterways remind us that even degraded habitat that's been transformed for human use can be a store of resilience and biodiversity. So conservation of urban waterways can be an important tool for the equitable enhancement of shared habitat for the mutual benefit of both wildlife and for people. And that brings us back to Sutro Sound. The truly remarkable thing wasn't that that otter appeared in San Francisco, it was where. What we see as the ruins of a bathhouse built by a philanthropist of another age, the otter sees as habitat. Landscape scale conservation is vital for the future of the planet, but if we can also learn to see habitat where it is instead of where we expect it to be, we can discover opportunities collectively and individually to recreate healthy and resilient environment in our own neighborhoods right where we live. And that's what the otters told us.
Terence, thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, for being here today. You've all given us a lot to think about and a lot to talk about. And I know we have a lot of good questions coming up, which I'm going to get to in one moment. But first, I want to mention a couple more presentations that are coming up this year. We are going to do, actually, Karen is coming back for us this summer to talk about those urban otters again, but she's doing a panel presentation this time with Talia Rose, who's been following otters on the Eel River for many, many years now, and is a fantastic photographer and otter chronicler. So we're going to get our urban/suburban and very countryside otter people together to really talk about some of the differences and similarities between otters that live in very, very different places. I know a lot of you are very interested in our research results and where we are and what we have and where we're going with them. And Terence and I are eager to do a deeper dive into research results. So we'll get back with you this fall and have a presentation on that. And then finally, we have two more upcoming events. One is our 10-year anniversary party. We're delighted to be hosted by Fadden Vineyards in Calistoga this year. And our celebration event is on May 1st from 2 to 5 p.m. We'll be putting the information about that on our website shortly. We will be open for sponsorships and for ticketing, and ticketing will open in a couple of weeks. So if you haven't signed up on our website, sign up to get our newsletters and you'll get all the information. We also put it out, of course, on social media. And we will run our splash art photography and poetry competition again this year, but not this summer. We're going to run it in the fall this time. It'll be really, it's always really fun. We love that. We love the competition. We love seeing people's artwork. It's very heartwarming to see how much artists, writers, poets, and photographers care deeply about our watersheds and help to bring awareness to the need to keep them safe for all of us. And we're almost going to start questions, but I have one more suggestion, and that is called Text to Donate, because we just got Text to Donate and we're so excited. We want to see whether it works. So if you feel like it, no pressure, but if you'd like to, try texting River Otter, all one word, to 44321. Don't be shy, and thank you. And now we'll have Terence moderate some questions for us.
Thanks, Megan. I'm going to give the first question to you. Can you talk a little bit about river otters spending time in saltwater and freshwater? Because
Sure.
people often don't realize that they spend time in saltwater.
Sure. River otters are extremely comfortable in all kinds of water, from salty to brackish to fresh. They need fresh water to keep their fur groomed and keep it waterproof and keep themselves warm in that cold water. And they need fresh water to drink, unlike sea otters, who don't ever need to come to land if they don't want to. But yes, river otters are happy in all kinds of water. And in fact, Sutro Sam really wowed everybody when he was out there at Sutro Baths, because after he had finished hunting out all the big fat lazy carp in that pool that he was hanging out by, he would head out into the big waves right out there at the headlands and come back, and people would be astounded to see this little tiny otter head. Little otter heads are tiny, going out through those big waves and then coming back perfectly well. So otters are fine in salt water. They do need fresh water.
The next question is either for, well, either Robin or Karen, or both of you might take this one. We had a question about a good technique for photographing otter tracks, because you think you've got it right, and then the photo doesn't quite come out as clearly as you thought. Either one of you has thoughts on that?
My only thoughts are, if it's with natural light, the sun should be at an angle so that you can see shadow within the tracks. If you're going to be using an exterior light source, I would basically keep that in mind. Put the light source at an angle so it shines like over the top of the tracks, and you might get a better shot. Karen?
Yeah, and I agree. And it depends on the time of day too. It really depends on the time of day when you shoot it, because it's all about light. Yeah.
And I would add, because I've had this experience many times, when you're photographing tracks to show an experienced tracker to get them to help you ID the tracks, you don't want to get just the tracks. You definitely get all the photos that you can, close-ups of the track, but you want to back off and get a photo of the entire area, and make sure you look around to see if there are other tracks beside it, if there are scrapes, if there are other signs of other animals around it, because that really helps the trackers to narrow down what it might be. Tracking is really hard. It's not simple at all.
Okay, I'm going to give you the next one, Megan. Can you talk about coexistence of beavers and river otters? And if you'd like to throw mink in there as well, that would be good.
Oh, sure. All right. Well, as we all know, beavers are nature's engineers who make these wonderful dams and make water come that allow water to build up behind them and make for beautiful wetlands. And therefore, once beavers have come into an area and set their dams up and the water starts growing behind those dams, fish tend to grow larger, all kinds of insects and other animals are attracted. And among the animals who are attracted to those fish and those aquatic insects that are in that pond are river otters. So if you have beavers, then you're pretty likely to have river otters sooner or later. Do the two get along? Yeah, not really. They are very wary of each other. River otters, as we know, are hungry carnivores. Beavers, of course, are vegetarians. River otters are not shy about taking beaver kits if they can get them. So beavers being much bigger than otters don't usually get it. They don't usually fight. River otters will actually run away from beavers, which weigh about 60 or so pounds, whereas river otters weigh about anywhere between 15 to 25 pounds. So if river otters can avoid a fight with a beaver, they will, and that's intelligent on their parts. The other connection between river otters and beavers is that occasionally river otters will use beaver bank dens to hang out in or to rest up in. And as far as mink go, I have never seen a mink and a river otter fight or seen them in close proximity. Mink and otters are both really fierce little carnivores, and I think an otter could easily kill a mink, and minks know that. They're not going to mess with them.
Thanks. Okay, the next, well, I'll just open this one up for anyone, because I think we all have an answer for this one. What is something that surprised you that you've learned about river otters? I'll give my answer. Because I'll tell you the first thing that I learned about river otters that surprised me was that two mothers would raise their young together. And we've seen this in a number of places in northern Tamales Bay and also at Abbott's Lagoon, where mothers who are related will jointly rear their pups. So that was surprising to me. Anyone else want to chime in?
I'll throw something in. Their metabolism, watching the amount of, well, just the amount of energy that they put towards consuming food and then pooping out. It's just, and that's all they do. It's just constant. And it's amazing to me on how they can burn through so much of their food intake, but then you watch them running around so much and always moving. Anyway, I was quite surprised. I didn't see any other animal that was quite like that. Almost nervous.
For me, it's how tactile they are. It's amazing how much they touch each other and how they greet each other. That surprised me.
I was thinking about that, Karen, about the group on either side of the canal who had never met each other before. Do you want to tell that story? That's a great story.
Oh, yeah. So earlier this summer, it was really fascinating. So in the canal that I've been kind of monitoring for the 4 years, there was actually 3 families, which was mind-blowing to me. We had a family, a mom, 4 pups, and then she had a helper daughter from last year helping her with her pups. We had a mom with 3 pups. We had a mom with 1 pup. And it was fascinating to me. One day I was walking down the canal. I was following the family of 4. And then all of a sudden, some people were walking to me, said, "Otters," because people recognized me on the trail. They go, "There's otters coming that way." And I said, "What?" And so the family with the four pups, the mom and the helper, they were coming together. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen. It was very interesting. Actually, the pups went up first to greet each other very tentatively. They all checked each other out. There was no aggression. And then they went their separate ways. And then later on, I went down farther. And in the canals, they have ladders in case people fall in, so on and so forth. And so it was hilarious. There was one family on one side and the other. And they were just playing on their own ladders, but always wary of each other. But there was no altercation. It was really fascinating and fun to watch. It was awesome.
I guess for me, the most exciting and amazing thing about river otters is how extraordinarily adaptable they are. They will eat any meat they can find. They're not really fussy about it. As long as it's not vegetation, they will eat it. And they will do fine with it. If they can eat only crayfish, they'll spend all their time eating crayfish because they're really easy to catch. They're happy to live in cities, in the countryside. They inhabit the watershed all the way from the mountains. Someone on the chat mentioned seeing otters up at Lake Tahoe, and we know they are there too. And they inhabit those mountainous areas all the way down to the coastlines. They're happy on the coast. They'll swim off to near coast islands. Their social lives are really adaptable as well. They can be all by themselves. They can be in groups. They can be mothers with pups. The only social thing they don't do is adult males and females don't like to hang out together unless it's mating season. So just all kinds of really adaptable things. They can even adapt to a reasonable amount of pollution in some areas that have polluted bays and polluted rivers. As long as they can get out of them, which is another great adaptation they have, they're good on land and in water. So if they need to get away from a polluted river, they can swim away and go somewhere else. So I think all of these adaptations and their amazing adaptability and curiosity and intelligence is what really is supporting them during these times of difficulties and climate change. And our desire is to make things as easy as we can, not just for river otters, but for all animals. We constantly harp on about watersheds because watersheds are what supports river otters, and watersheds are, of course, what supports all of us.
Okay, well, that's a good segue into the next question for you, Megan. Why are river otters important to watershed ecosystems?
River otters are important they're important because they're one of the few predator species that we see in a lot of watersheds. They're a medium-sized predator that were gone for a long time and are returning to watersheds. And their return is giving us the information that that watershed is now able to support them. So they were gone from San Francisco Bay for so many decades because San Francisco Bay couldn't support them. The fish were a mess. It was full of pollution of all kinds. Once that all started getting cleaned up and habitat started getting better, the otters came back. So the fact that they're back is telling us that we're doing something right. And not just we're doing something right, but we need to keep doing it and doing more of it.
And here's the question that anyone can answer. What can we do to help otters and or River Otter Ecology Project?
Terence, I think you should answer that.
The best way to help river otters is the same way to help any wildlife, our general environment, and ourselves, really, is to work towards healthy watersheds that are clean, unpolluted, that have intact riparian areas, that are not overdeveloped, that are restored in a thoughtful way. And not only and also to demand these things from our political representatives, both at the local, state, and national level. You know your own neighborhood best. You know what it requires, what it's lacking. So speak up. That would be my answer.
Terence, thank you. I agree. Speak up, speak up, speak up. Sign those petitions, call your representatives. They do pay attention to you, especially if you call them. Signing a petition is fine, but you need to be in touch. You need to say to them that, you know, call on the phone. They're eager to hear from you. They want to know what you think. And it really supports our politicians who are trying to get policy made that's good environmental policy. It can be so tough. But if they can say, I had 45 people call me in 2 hours about this issue, then that does make a difference. So that is something that we can all do. Anything else, Karen?
Well, a couple things I was
Robin?
thinking, you know, get involved in your community. Get involved in projects, you know, Megan mentioned earlier about the fishing line receptacles. Several years ago, I got myself involved in that. And because it disturbed me at these ponds that I monitor, they stock them with trout and people can try fishing. And the kids, it's cute, it's fun. But the problem is we're out of control with fishing line, and otters can get entangled in it. Birds can get entangled in it. They can ingest hooks. So we actually got some put in some local parks, and there's 2 of us that actually empty that thing every couple months. And it's surprising how well it works. Get involved with the River Otter Ecology Project. Find a passion that's yours, because it's all connected. Whether you join an Audubon Society, whether you get involved with River Otter Ecology Project, we're all working together to protect the environment, to protect species, because one affects the other. And educate, learn about what's in your town, what's around you. Go outside and see. You'd be surprised. And if you walk very slowly and observe, you'll be shocked at what you'll find. It's amazing. We just have to give wildlife, otters, a chance.
Yeah, and if you want to help directly, especially if you live in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, we actually have our annual volunteer training coming up in a couple of months. So you can go to our website, you can sign up to volunteer, fill out the form there, and you'll be on our mailing list. And once we have all the information, we'll follow that up, and you can join our crew. The 4 of us are more than, or I should say, the number of volunteers that we have are significantly more than what you see here. We have all sorts of different opportunities depending on what you want to do. If you want to go out in the field and set up cameras and check the cameras and search for sites, we've got that. If you would rather be at a tabling situation where we're at like the Beaver Festival in Martinez, people come up and ask questions, we've got that available. And we actually have a whole host of other stuff available as well, which Megan can talk about. But that's one of the easiest things to do if you live around here, is join us, and we'll help you to see it through the otter's eyes.
Oh, you couldn't have said it better, Robin. Thank you. So we are just about at 5 o'clock now, and I think we can take one more question if someone wants to put it in the chat or raise their hand. We can do one more.
If you could put your question in the chat, that would be great.
Okay. Oh, I see one Q&A.
I got that one
Oh,
already.
we got that one. Okay. So everyone, as my final goodbye, I'm going to thank you all for being here. And I can't tell you how important it's been to us in the past 10 years to have the support of our community, the support of our volunteers, of our otter spotters, of our volunteers who do work in the field, of our funders, our wonderful board who does so much for us, our science advisory board who really keeps us understanding the science and moving forward on a good scientific path, our educators who have helped us. So thank you, thank you. We're excited to have come this far, and we're looking forward to the next 10 years. So thank you again for being here. And we will put the presentation on YouTube within the next couple of weeks. Give us a little time. We've got a lot going on right now. So thank you again. And I'll say good night now. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.